So what actually brought him out of atheism, guys? This is not Jake saying it. This is out of apostate Christian's own mouth. He was a staunch atheist. There is no God. There definitely is no God. What brought him out of his atheism was going to... Okay, guys, I've got another exciting episode for you, or at least what I think is exciting and interesting and amusing at the same time. That is, and I'm sure many of you have seen, that Mr. Apus, aka Apostate Prophet, or some might like to call him now Apostate Christian, has decided to go on his journey towards Christianity. He's pointed out in response to many recent criticisms that he hasn't actually officially declared himself to be a Christian. But let's take a look at his recent announcement on Twitter and what some people have been referring to recently. As you can see, this is a Twitter post. He says, "For 10 years, I was an atheist and agnostic. For 2 years, I have been searching. Today, I have been accepted as a catechumen in the Orthodox Church, on my way to becoming a baptized Christian." So if you see, the language is very specific. He says, on his way to becoming a baptized Christian. In other words, he's not actually officially a Christian yet. He's just on his path towards becoming a Christian. Okay, fair enough. But he has explicitly been an atheist in the past, and people are wondering, okay, if you're on your path towards Christianity, what led you towards this path? What made you begin to start doubting your atheism? Are you no longer officially an atheist or agnostic? Do you actually have a firm belief in God? If so, why do you believe it's true? He's never really answered or went into detail on any of these questions, right? But he did release a couple videos recently talking about his recent experience at church. So let's take a look at some of those highlights, and we'll see from the horse's own mouth, Mr. Apus, exactly what led him out of atheism at the very least. Not necessarily towards accepting Christianity just yet, as he claims anyway, but what led him towards rejecting atheism. Let's take a look.
I would say the only reason that I don't outright come out and say I am a Christian now is that I'm waiting for a final confirmation.
So hear that. The only reason why he's saying that he's not a Christian yet, or that he hasn't come out and explicitly said he's a Christian yet, is because he's waiting for his final confirmation. So what actually led up to this?
I have to collect all my thoughts about this now. Technically, I went to church for the first time a month ago, several weeks ago, for the first time with my wife, because she has been going to church. She recently became a Christian again. She was a Christian, then she left Christianity and was an atheist for the longest time. Then she returned to Christianity. It's kind of funny because over all these years since we met, I was always the guy who was interested in religious stuff. I was interested in Christian things. I would sometimes even listen to Christian music, and she would be like... So it's kind of weird that she is the one who then suddenly becomes a Christian. This last weekend, I went willingly, deliberately to attend and to practice and to participate, to see how it goes, because I felt the will and the need to participate. And technically, I consider this the first time that I actually went to church to participate.
And the first? So, look, his wife, which I already made a video on this sometime last year, was an atheist. She recently converted or reverted. She went back towards her former religion. I don't know if she was an Orthodox Christian before, but she became a quote-unquote Orthodox Christian, I believe Greek Orthodox. I mean, let's be honest. If your wife converts to a different religion, obviously, that's going to have some natural effect on you. And so, I mean, I don't know if Mr. Apostate Christian would deny that, but I think it's fairly obvious that that has to have some effect and is one of the reasons why he's been on his search or path towards Christianity. Whether he accepts that or not, I mean, it just seems like an obvious reason why, or at least one of the reasons why. But let's let him continue to tell us, what brought him out of his staunch atheism.
And the first thing I felt was, I felt a warm welcome. Smiles from people, a nod from the priest, a warm welcome from the priest. He saw me when I first visited, so he came to me and said, "Welcome back, I'm glad to see you here." I did follow the liturgy, which is an ancient, beautiful liturgy. I felt very touched and humbled and good with repeated invocations or repeated chants of "Lord, have mercy." The one thing that I was most, the one thing that I felt very, very, very deeply was in preparation of the communion, of the Eucharist, the prayer following up to it. There is a part which is about, like the thief, we say, "Remember me in your kingdom." I think that's how the wording goes. Chanting that out just made me shiver. And I don't know. I've always had lots of respect for Christianity.
So doing these prayers and partaking in the liturgy just made him feel this abundance of warmth, and he felt so good and he was so touched. I hope not touched in the wrong sort of way that, many priests touch young boys, but, I hope that wasn't the case for Mr. Apostate Christian. I doubt that it was, right? But nevertheless, what really touched him, what really drew him, or at least one of the things that drew him, is chanting these prayers about the Lord. Oh my God. Now imagine if a Muslim actually said that that was one of their reasons or one of their main reasons for considering Islam, right? He would tear them apart, just as he's done many reviews of videos of Muslims converting to Islam and criticize them highly because he said, "Oh, there's no proof here. There's nothing about the truth of the religion, or they're not giving any good reasons for converting to Islam." And this is what we're getting from him so far. But it gets better, trust me. It gets much better.
Christianity and Christian practices and Christian prayers and all that. And Christian tradition, biblical stuff. I spent so much of my time over the years studying Bible, whether it be the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, or more recently the New Testament. I read through the Gospels, studied the life of Jesus, and then I just received a blessing from the priest, which felt very nice. And time just went by. It didn't feel long. I participated and time just went by, and it was beautiful. He asked me about where I am right now. I told him about everything. I told him I'm kind of interested. I'm on a journey. I'm not entirely sure what I believe at this moment. I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing at this moment, but I'm on a journey, and I like where it's going. That's what I said. I just feel.
So he got blessed by the priest, and it felt so good for him, right? That's what he's saying. And he's talking about his discussion with the priest at the church and where he's at. And he doesn't really know yet, but he's on his journey. Let's continue and see, more about this journey.
I just feel a warmth, a gentle, welcoming warmth and embrace. I know over the years people have asked me a lot where I am standing spiritually, religiously, and so on. And I think, thinking back, there was even a time where I said, I don't think I will ever become a Christian, or I don't think I will ever become religious again. I don't think I will ever believe again. A lot has changed over the last year, especially since I went to Israel with David. I don't know what it is, but going to Israel, especially standing before the wall, the Western Wall, that moment that we first went there and stood there, it did something in me. It changed me. Before I went to Israel, I was cold, atheistic. I think the moment I stood before that wall and pondered, something started moving inside me, and I lost that cold wall inside me. That wall broke that wall inside me. And I started moving toward just being agnostic and no longer making assertions about, I know there is no God. There is no God.
So what actually brought him out of atheism, guys? This is not Jake saying it. This is out of apostate Christian's own mouth. He was a staunch atheist. There is no God. There definitely is no God. What brought him out of his atheism? More towards agnosticism at the very least, or at least being open to there being a God, was going to Israel. Wow, what a shock. Israel is behind it again. And what specifically in Israel did he go there? Did he get some proofs about the existence of God, whether it be rational proofs or, maybe proofs regarding certain miracles or prophecies in Scripture? Or was it any of these things? No, it was standing before the Wailing Wall. It was standing before the wall in so-called Israel. And did you hear what he said? He had a wall in his heart that was blocking him from truly investigating the existence of God or faith and belief in God. And what removed that wall? What broke down that wall? Him standing before the great wall that is so monumental in Judaism and so-called Israel. Just standing before that wall broke down that wall in his heart. Wow, unbelievable. It is so amazing, so mesmerizing, so captivating, so unbelievable how standing before this wall and this symbol of Judaism could make him leave his atheism. Now, how many of your former atheist associates out there are actually find that convincing, or do they find it laughable? Just as you laughed at all of the other so-called converts to Islam, and you mock them for their reasons, but you give these ridiculous reason of standing before a wall that actually brought you out of your atheism? Unbelievable. But let's continue. Maybe he gives better reasons. Let's give him a chance.
And so many experiences, so many good experiences with religious people ever since, with Jewish religious people there, which I explained, and with other Christian religious people since then, have really have changed my mind on things. And I have more and more come to a place where I no longer feel like I can just say, I am an atheist, I know there is no God. And to be fair, I know that it might be possible to live as atheists for other people, but for me, to be very, very honest and very blunt, it wasn't a very pleasant ride. It wasn't a very pleasant experience. In fact, most of the time, over the last 2 years or so, I felt this dreadful feeling of emptiness and hopelessness and nothing to look forward to and nothing to live for. And whenever it came creeping up, I was just terrified by it. I have replaced it with prayer. Yes, despite the fact that I only just went to church for the first time to practice, I have been practicing prayers for a month or two, and they started replacing the emptiness with something good and something better. I think to be very...
So here's another thing. When he was a so-called atheist, before he stood before the wall, with his little yarmulke on and saying, "Oh God, accept me, I'm a Zionist. Just accept me and guide me to the right path. I'm standing before your wall," Anyway, before that, when he was an atheist, he admits he felt this overwhelming, emptiness, and he became very nihilistic. And in another recent video, he was actually saying that, he even maybe was wondering, what is the point of all this? Why the heck is he still even alive? What's the purpose of him even living? And he felt this emptiness. Now, I'm not going to dispute that. It's actually a fact of the matter that many atheists feel this because, and we do believe that this is due to a rejection of not only God, but Islam, right? So, I'm not going to dispute that at all, but again, this is part of his story. Now, what replaced that emptiness for him? Prayer. These prayers of chanting, and he said that he was doing Jewish prayers before that, but he really didn't feel anything when he was doing the Jewish prayers. He tried to, practice Judaism for a little while, but it didn't really work for him. So he moved on to doing these chanting prayers about the Lord's mercy and all of these kind of things, and it felt something. It touched his heart, similar to how it touched his heart when he was in front of the Wailing Wall, or maybe even something greater than that. These are a summary of his reasons so far, right? What brought him out of his atheism towards his path towards Christianity. But let's continue. Maybe there's a couple minutes more. Maybe he gives us something a little bit more convincing or better. Let's take a look.
Very honest, for most of the last years, I didn't want to even try out prayers because I kind of wanted to uphold this this proud feeling of being an atheist. I was, well, what prayer? What do you mean prayer? Prayer will make me will take my rationality and reason away. I can't do that. I eventually decided that it's okay to just put that aside and to just do it. And it feels humbling and fulfilling. For the longest time, I always thought, no, if I want to practice something, if I want to follow something, I have to know 100% in my mind that it is absolutely true. It was actually David who recently helped me overcome that by just mentioning to me that that if you always think that you have to be 100% sure of what lies in front of you, you won't get anywhere. Of course, he said that all of this in a much more profound way, but I am less arrogant, more open to humility foremost. Exploring the path that I am right now. At this point, I'm not entirely sure what will happen and where I will go and what I will do. But I would say the only reason that I don't outright come out and say I am a Christian now is that I'm waiting for a final confirmation. I think Islam took a heavy toll on me, and I know I have been wearing crosses and also saying that I practice or that I pray and things like that. But I have still not officially said that I am a Christian. But oddly enough, I also don't want to say at this point that I'm an agnostic anymore. I'm just on the doorstep, and I will let everyone know what happens next. So stay tuned and wait for the next episode. Yeah, that's it. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for everyone who has been with me on this journey.
So there you have it, folks. That was his explanation. Now he's done and participated in other live streams with his friend David, who somehow came up with this great explanation of how you can believe something or believe in something without having to be 100% certain in something. Oh, wow, that is such an amazing revelation, right? So we just know how smart this guy was as a so-called atheist. But he said he's no longer an atheist. He doesn't even feel comfortable calling himself an agnostic. But notice there's no explanation in there on how he knows or why he believes in the existence of God. Something that we debated him on before and that many other theists and Muslims have debated him on. What's his proof for the existence of God? Does he have a rational proof? Does it something just experiential, like standing before a wall? Is it something historical? What is his argument? Is it something scriptural? We've gotten none of that. What brought him out of atheism? Standing before a wall in Israel, or so-called Israel, right? And he's a staunch Zionist, which many of his, new Orthodox Christian friends have pointed out to him that Orthodox Christianity doesn't support Zionism. But hey, maybe he'll get the memo later on. I wonder how Mr. Apostate Christian is going to, if he winds up fully embracing Christianity and declaring himself an Orthodox Christian, how is he going to defend doctrines that are irrational, like the doctrine of the Trinity, and the fact that you, as a Trinitarian Christian in the Orthodox Church, would have to affirm the existence of, in reality, three gods, but yet claim that there's only one God, or the fact that you believe in a God-man who's truly God and truly man at the same time. He's both all-knowing and ignorant at the same time. He's all-powerful and weak at the same time. He's created and yet uncreated. He is eternal and yet has a beginning in time. He's all of these different things, all of these different contradictory amalgamations in one. And somehow, this is the God-man that you must worship, otherwise you go to hell for eternity. Really, is that what you believe now, Mr. Apostate Christian, when you tried to convince us about the irrationality of hell? What about the Orthodox Christian position on hell and the fact that if you reject that Jesus is the one and only true God, man, and Savior of mankind, then you will burn in hell for eternity? What about all of your arguments and all of your moral arguments against Islam, and how your own great partner, David Wood, said, actually, these aren't arguments against Islam. They don't in and of themselves prove Islam to be false. And how he says that if God actually revealed them, then he would accept them. Why? Because many of those same things that you find problematic were revealed by your same God, Jesus, and the Trinitarian God in the Old Testament. Remember when we bashed Robert Spencer over the head and he folded like a weak beach chair? Yeah, remember that? Because he couldn't actually say that the killing of apostates in and of itself is morally reprehensible and is in and of itself is morally incorrect. He couldn't say that because he knows that it's revealed by his God in the Old Testament and all of those other problems. So if you ever do fully embrace Christianity, I will be the first one to challenge you to a debate on those topics. I'm sure other Muslims will, or even other atheists that used to be your former associates will challenge you on many of those things. And we look forward to seeing how you're able to twist and defend your newly found irrational, and according to your own previous standards, immoral positions, and unscientific and everything else. We look forward to that, but we'll just watch and see how this journey continues and how you pray and maybe go back to Israel and pray in front of that wall and think about the Lord's mercy. And maybe that will push you to your final step of fully embracing Christianity. And in the meantime, stop mocking Muslims and those who become Muslim for much better reasons than what you've presented thus far. But until then, guys, I hope that you found this video interesting at the very least. If you did and would like to see other videos like it and previous videos on my channel, then please consider subscribing to the channel, hit the like button, and comment and let me know your thoughts about this recent religious journey of Mr. Apostate Christian. And if you want to go above and beyond and support my work at the channel, then the best ways to do so are at the pinned links at the top of the description of this video, as well as in the comment section. With that being said, guys, until next time, inshallah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.